Hi everyone, it's Saturday, and I think I mostly feel emotionally fractious right now. I know it's because of the really tragic, horrible, devastating loss of Charlie Kirk this week. The unnecessary, world worsening, light destroying, extremely sad loss of someone who's actually very much like me, in that I have an extremely high tolerance for people who are of a different mind than myself, and that is a beautiful thing. Tolerance is a necessary attribute for diversity to flourish. So what's so crushing is that the same people who out of their mouths will come these words of support for concepts like DEI, which they view as being this meritorious, virtuous attempt to promote and encourage and inspire more diversity. Okay, so they're like, I am the person who wants diversity in my nation. At the same time, those people engage in various layers of cancel culture. They openly, out of one side of their mouth, they're like, DEI is great. Out of the other side of their mouth, I just told my brother I'm never going to talk to him again because he is a Christian. Out of the left side of their mouth, you know, the type of thing that goes along with like what they don't realize is white saviorism, which is actually a form of a superiority complex and white guilt and that whole stuff, but it comes out as virtuous. And then on the other side, I just fired my housekeeper because I found out that she voted for Trump. Out of one side of the mouth, you know, I'm going to go to one of those dinners and we're going to sit around with some women who are going to explain to us why we're all racist. And, you know, if you're white, you're racist and you can't avoid it and you're bad and all this stuff and da-da-da-da-da-da. And then over here, they're going to celebrate that Charlie Kirk was murdered in front of a crowd of hundreds, if not thousands, and even more people watching online. And that these beautiful young minds were just shocked and traumatized by this horrific, violent act. And you know, I mean, and they'll celebrate that, or they'll shrug their shoulders and say, I mean, post the most egregiously non-compassionate, judgmental, distanced, out of touch with your humanity. Oh my gosh. So all of that has made me feel a bit fragile. But the reality is, there's another reason why I'm feeling fragile right now. And it's because it was about 2 weeks ago. So I have a new job, and I'm working, I added it all up. I have like 4 different jobs. One of them is like a 9-to-5 job. Then there's a 1-day-a-week job. Then there was another evening job. And then there was an events job. And in general, I'm spending about 62 hours a week serving people that are not related to my family or my property or myself, right? So I'm working about 62 hours a week right now. And then I come home and I walk into my house and I have to then become the wife. Now I know what it means to be a homemaker. I was a homemaker for the past 28 years. So I had some side jobs along the way every once in a while, but and so I a couple weeks ago I came home and I'm just so tired, not tired in a complaining way, but just in an appropriate way. I got up early, I worked, I ran errands during the lunch break, I worked some more. It's very good work. I'm serving a lot of people. I'm learning a lot. I'm doing my best. I'm completely invested. I come home and I'm like, oh man, wow, I'm just tired. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just wish I could come home to a wife. I mean, not like I want a relationship with a woman, but I was like, wait a minute. I can't even imagine not being thrilled if I came home to a property where the garden was watered during the day, the animals were taken care of, the guy who came and did the mowing was met by a person in my family, as it was actually my son helped, but it's like, someone did that, let's say, and the floors are swept, let's say, and maybe one of the bathrooms was cleaned, some grocery shopping happened yesterday, and some food got made today, and the food all over the farm that I used to be the one who was preserving and making jam and preserves and dried apple slices and homemade tea and all the ways that a homemaker saves money by capturing the food wealth in season and preserving it for the winter and the spring to come. Imagine if I came home to someone who had been diligently working, since they got up on all of these different things, and I walk into a house where there's the smell of good food, which when I had my housemates, one from Ukraine, one from the Philippines, they were always making homemade food. My house smelled so good. I really miss them. And they would oftentimes, I'm going to cry, they would oftentimes share. So I would have, I was taking care of a family and a house but sometimes they'd be like, hey, I made extra. Do you want some? I can't imagine coming home from working and not being over the world thrilled, happy, grateful, relieved, and so joyful to see that smiling person from the kitchen go, hey, how's your day? I just made some hamburgers, and so this is where I realized how really utterly and completely broken and damaged my ex-husband was. And I really get it. This was that the horror of my marriage was not my fault, because it doesn't make sense for him to have worked his job and come home to this other partner who had done all of those things very well. I was really good at everything that I did, the many, many balls I juggled, and walking into a house and not feeling that gratitude, that relief. And I always had a smile on my face. It was never a come home to a bitch session. It was never come home to whining and complaining. I never said that he didn't make enough money. I never said we needed more money. I never complained about anything. And then instead to have someone who would come in the house and act like you had done nothing and then immediately just start launching into a barrage of complaining about people in Washington, D.C. who you're angry at. Just, something was seriously broken that man could enjoy something that I don't have, which is a fully invested wife doing an amazing job of taking care of this property. And I come home from my various jobs and I walk into a house where I'm the only one who's going to clean that toilet, sweep that floor, wash those dishes. And normally I keep a really clean kitchen. And now it's every once in a while, I'm so tired, I have to go to bed and the sink has dishes in it and the clean dishes haven't been put away. And I feel bad for my friend who's staying here for a month or so as he's transitioning back onto the island, because I feel like it's my obligation to make sure that I go to bed with a clean kitchen, so whoever gets up in the morning, it's clean when you make your breakfast. But I'm just so tired and I have to get up the next morning and go back to work, and I just don't have the energy to do everything. And the funny thing is, though, none of this is worse than it was being married to my husband after he retired, because he was retired for a year and a half before I finally realized he was actually getting worse after retirement, not better. And I was like, I really just can't do this. And my kids were like, Mom, you are in an abusive marriage. You have been all these years. Why are you still there? We're fine. You need to take care of yourself. That was why I filed for divorce, because my eldest son in particular was like, Mom, I have been sitting by waiting for you to get out of the situation, because I don't want to tell you what to do with your life, but please, please take care of yourself. I want nothing more than to see you happy. Please get out of this. If that's what you want to do, please do so. So, after he retired, we'd always talked about how, he would work out of the home. I would work in the home, which is everything, the homemaking, the raising the kids, the building this beautiful food for us, everything. And I did literally everything. I paid all of our bills. I did all of our taxes. I did all the doctor's appointments. I did all the taking care of the vehicles. I did everything. My ex-husband worked the job. He would go up on the roof if there was something on the roof that needed to be done, and he liked mowing trails. He really enjoyed that. It was good exercise for him, and he really liked the trails. That's pretty much it. And he washed dishes sometimes. He would wash dishes every once in a while. That was actually sort of cool. But otherwise I did everything. And the idea was that when he retired, the kids would be old and grown, so there wouldn't be any homeschooling or childcare or any of that going on, but he would take over for the shopping and the house cleaning, and heaven forbid, maybe a little bit of cooking every once in a while, and watering things. And he would take over that, and I would get to go sit in an office. And I'd spent 10 years working on a novel series and podcasts and a radio show and different things like on the side, right? Just eking those out of whenever I had free time. If I had an hour alone in a coffee shop, I sat down with a notebook and worked on my story, right? Very much like what the Harry Potter author would do, where she eked out her first book of the Harry Potter series. And my first 2 books are written. And, so there was going to be a trade-off. He would take on the homemaking because he'd have all of his free time as a retiree. And with no kids around, it would take him maybe, 3 hours a day maximum to do everything. And otherwise, he'd still have all of his freedom and retirement fun. And I would become an additional income earner, and I would pursue a career for a decade to 15 years and really invest in being the secondary source of outside income. So I would go out in the world and he would stay here. But when he retired, that didn't happen. He did equal or less than he had done before. And so, here I am. I'm doing it all, and it's better that I'm divorced, because at least I'm not also living with a massive hurricane, dark cloud, miserable, unhappy person who I was scared of, I was intimidated by, I was abused by, I was, dodging, avoiding, trying to manage every situation so that he wouldn't get triggered. I mean, all that's gone, thank goodness. But I can't imagine the beauty, the wonderfulness, and this is my point, is that we really do need the homemakers. It doesn't matter who's the homemaker, but homes need attention. They need to be physically maintained. Land needs to be watered. Plants need to be repotted and seeded and grown. Animals need to go to the vet. Whether you have kids or not, homes, if you're living in some little sterile apartment and you have 3 potted plants and no pets, and well, then I guess your home can just sit there and gather dust, and who cares? But real homes require a human to caretake them. You have animal husbandry. That's the farmer taking care of the animals. Homemaking is beautiful. And when you don't have a homemaker, you immediately start to notice the strain and the stress. And so here I am, working over 60 hours a week and trying to continue to do everything that a homemaker does. And I know I'm going to die eventually, and I'll get old eventually and die anyways. So this isn't something that can be maintained as a consistency. Like I can make it for a year probably and be healthy and not get sick. But it's also, it's not really living the best life a person can choose. And so anyway, so it's just been really interesting to realize how important it is. And all those years when I was a homemaker, and I had women who worked who would look down on me like I was just this sort of ignorant, barefoot and pregnant type of chick. And then I had women who worked, but they didn't want to work. So you have the career women who were like, I made the smart move. I have my career. I have my kids in school, and I'm doing it the right way. And I'm the modern woman. And then, March over here is just sort of like this, I don't know. They look down on me. And sometimes I think they felt a little bit ashamed of their own choice if they felt like they were neglecting their own kids. So then they were sort of like mad at me because it was so obvious that I was available to my kids every minute of every day for decades, and so there was a bit of the resentment. And then you had the women who worked because they had to, but they didn't really want to. They would have loved to maybe have been a part-time worker or a homemaker. And they were resentful because they were like jealous that I had actually a husband who made enough money that I could afford to stay home. And so they were jealous and sad and grieving that they themselves were in such a state of fiscal distress. So all these years, I'm just sitting here going, oh my gosh, my worth was massive, because I can't imagine how grateful I would feel, how lucky I'd feel if there was a human willing to dedicate their life to taking care of the home that human would share with me. I would be thrilled to work my 60 hours a week and bring home, money and be like, here, take the money, do what you need with it. I don't need anything. Coming home to someone who's loving and happy to see me and wants to watch a movie or play some games or go for a walk or cook cookies with me or anything, and who's happy to see me and to just know that everything's taken care of. And yeah, sure, this weekend I'll help you out by cleaning the chicken coop. I'm doing all of it on my own anyways. If I had someone who was willing to take on 90% of the work and ask me to help out here and there, why wouldn't I? I'm getting 90% of it gifted to me from someone. Oh my God. So what can I say? If you're a homemaker for a couple of decades or so, and you really understand what it means, and then you have to go off and live without a homemaker in your own life, and you're working 60 hours a week, and you're coming home to a house, you got to now be homemaker and worker. Yeah, you get it. You appreciate what you don't have, and you now see clearly what you were offering. And I just wish that I had chosen much better when I was younger and found myself a decent man, a really decent man, because a decent man would have been over the world happy to have me as a wife. I mean, I was just amazing, and I just happened to, unfortunately, choose a man who 100% didn't get it. And be careful. Be careful who you choose to dedicate yourself to, and be really, really, if the right man is going to be willing to treat you with respect from the very beginning, and that means not risk getting you pregnant before the two of you have actually really proven to one another that you are actually really good and decent human beings. Anyone who's pushing you to risk pregnancy and then be trapped in a relationship because you're doing your best you can now to take care of those kids, and anyone who's willing to risk pregnancy, then they're not. Right off the bat, they're probably not the right man. They can be, but you're playing Russian roulette. There should be a period of time where you're checking to make sure that if you're going to have sex before marriage, at least wait long enough so that if you end up getting unintentionally pregnant, you're not now stuck with someone who turns out to be awful. Because it can happen. Anyways, yep, homemakers are amazing. Doesn't matter whether it's the husband or the wife. All homes require more than one human to take care of them. And collaborating together and having someone fully dedicated to all that goes into the home and the property and the land and the animals and the family and the nurturing and all that is really wise. That's probably the healthiest way that humans can live. Two people working full-time, shoving your kids into a school bus so that the totalitarian state can raise them for you. Honestly, don't do it. Just don't do it. Okay?